let's do a quick recap, okay, on what we have covered the week before, okay, not the lecture test. Okay, so the week before, I believe we covered exchange rate policy, and that was quite problematic, okay, when I was grading your scripts. Okay, so let's do a quick recap on what was covered on exchange rate policies. Okay, please type out. Okay, and if we like to have an early holiday dismissal, please do me a favor by participating, yeah? And what do you still remember about exchange rate policy? Right, someone brought up Marshall-Lerner condition. Have you googled Marshall-Lerner? Is it named after economies? I'm not sure though. I think so, right? Mine is someone, if someone is can help me to check, okay, whether is it named after an economist or Nobel Prize winner or something like that. I'm curious. It never occurred to me to check this person out. I believe it's named after a person. Yeah, J-curve effect. You learn the J-curve effect. And what does the J-curve effect tells us? Okay, later on it will appear in the quiz. And what does the J-curve effect tells us? Thanks. Okay, the Marshall-Lerner condition is named after a British economist, Alfred Marshall, and Russian economist, Abba P. Lerner. Right now, Russia is not exactly the best place to be in. Right, any Nobel potential winners, okay, will strike out any Russians from the list. Right. Yeah, putting politics aside. Yeah. Okay, so this is yes. Okay, confirmed. Named after economies. Okay, what about J-curve effect? Okay, what does J-curve effect states? Remember? What's on the y-axis and what's on the x-axis? Do I have to pull out the notes to... Seems like a cold start. Where is it? Okay, exchange rate policy. See? Okay, the J-curve effect tells us that, okay, upon an initial depreciation, your balance of trade will worsen, okay, before it improves. Okay, so earlier on we covered that the J-curve effect, okay, is satisfied, okay, using Marshall-Lerner condition. Why? Okay, because of the value and the volume effect that I have covered earlier on. Okay, so make sure you're familiar with the value and the volume effect. You don't need to explain that. Okay, but you need to state that Marshall-Lerner condition holds. And upon an initial depreciation, okay, the PED of your exports, summation of your imports greater than 1, then quantity demanded of your exports and imports will be more responsive to price changes. Is everyone clear? Okay, this one will appear in your quiz later, so you cannot afford to get this wrong, especially Marshall-Lerner condition. What is the condition in words? And the J-curve effect. And we also learn about depreciation, effects of depreciation and appreciation, right? Yes? So we learned that every central bank can choose to, not every, okay, but especially for Singapore, okay, when we choose to target exchange rate, okay, you can choose to depreciate or appreciate. So what is the primary why do central banks would like to appreciate their currency? What's the consideration? What do they want to achieve? Do you still remember? Why do they want to appreciate? What is the biggest objective that they want to meet with an appreciation? Come on. Realize that I keep asking such questions, and these kind of questions are really tricky. So some of the students are asking me, why do some countries appreciate, some countries depreciate? Okay, you need to know what is the primary concern. Alright, so appreciation. Okay, so far Reina, okay, is the closest to the answer. Okay, Reina. Okay, I've mentioned this before, and if you type out anything other than what I'm going to say, please note this in the book. Okay, the primary effects of an appreciation, is to moderate production costs, especially imported cost push inflation. So just now I was actually scrolling the news, okay, and you mentioned that the RMB and SGD exchange rate, okay, SGD has appreciated significantly against the RMB. Okay, RMB means Chinese yuan. Okay, and if you were to Google that, you realize that why is there a need to appreciate? Why? Because China is a close trading partner, right? And we import a lot of raw materials from there, especially with the Shanghai lockdown, the Beijing lockdown. Okay, you realize that, okay, China is the manufacturer of the world, right? A lot of imports, okay, from China, especially raw materials, okay, cannot flow out from China, and this will drive up production costs or imported production costs significantly. Okay, therefore you realize that Sing dollar has appreciated sharply, okay, versus the Chinese yuan, okay, in order to moderate or address imported cost push inflation. So for whoever that brought up demand pull, okay, or whoever that brought up price stability, not good enough. Okay, primarily imported cost push inflation. Please put this down. Okay, this star is exceptionally crucial. Well, the secondary channel is to what? Okay, is to lower demand pull inflation. That is the secondary channel, never the primary. You guys need to know what's the main and what's the side. Okay, so the secondary channel tells us that this will lower demand pull inflation through the net exports channel. Okay, is everyone clear? Okay, and for depreciation, okay, depreciation is primarily used to promote export competitiveness. Primarily used to promote export competitiveness to drive actual growth, to lower demand deficient unemployment. Okay, so make sure you get the direction right and what is the rationale behind each direction of your exchange rate. Okay, then you will be on safe side. So I mentioned before, exchange rate is exceptionally tricky. Okay, so you need to know what to address. Right, so to sum up, appreciation is to address inflation, especially cost push inflation. Okay, a depreciation is to address the remaining of the goals, right? To promote actual growth, to reduce demand deficient unemployment, and potentially to improve your balance of trade. Okay, for my H1, H2 students. Clear? Alright, so with this, okay, we'll start with the quiz. Okay, so please join me in this quiz. Okay, I'm going to copy the link. Okay, everyone, okay, please join the quiz. I should have 8 people here. Today's attendance is a bit tardy. Not sure why. But I still give thanks to whoever that made time here. I should have 8 peeps here. 4, 5, 6, 7. Who else? Okay. Ready? So remember, okay, keep track of the questions that you get wrong. Okay, and I'll go through them one shot all together at the end. Okay, so with that, good luck, all the best. Okay, fight it out among yourselves, Go. sorry for those who cannot read. Okay, I will make question 3 a free pass. I'm so sorry. Okay. For those who cannot read, okay, later on we'll exemplify together. Okay, so sorry about that. But for those who can read, well done. Okay, this one massacred. Decimation. Alright, tiebreaker. Last question. Whoever that's leading, keep it up. Whoever is the second, your time to catch up. Okay, so we can see so the highest is a just pass. So it means that what? It means that we have a lot more things to do for this topic. Okay, so please take down the corrections that I'm about to show, especially the questions that you got wrong. Okay, and if you have any questions for me, okay, you can raise it up directly via the chat function. Clear? Alright, okay, so let's look out for the first question. An economy wants to reduce the balance of payment surplus. Okay, in other words, they want to achieve a balance of payment deficit, right? Okay, and to be more specific, we want to look out for the balance of trade deficit. Okay, so which combination of policies is the most appropriate? Okay, we can see that. I'm so sorry, my H1 students. I did not address this. I did not prep you all for Bob. Okay, so all we need to look out for is balance of trade and your X minus M. How do we achieve the greatest deficit for X minus M? Right, so the first one will be an appreciation. Okay, the appreciation in the future, we'll be learning this as a form of expenditure switching policy. Okay, so you can see that by appreciating the currency, your exports in terms of what? Okay, in terms of foreign currency, okay, will be more expensive. Okay, your imports in terms of domestic currency will be cheaper. Okay, and therefore, okay, your export goes down, your import goes up. Likewise, cutting of interest rate, okay, you realize that this is a form of expenditure reducing policies, especially for my H2 students. Pay attention to how this two works. Cutting of interest rates results in a contraction in your AD and R, increase in your AD and RNY. Okay, this is expansionary monetary policy. And an expansionary monetary policy will result in a higher demand for import. Okay, assuming that import is a normal good. Okay, therefore, this will result in your balance of trade and your balance of payment deficit. So please pen this down. This is actually a very good classical example of expenditure switching and expenditure reducing policy. Okay, so for my H2 students, I will cover this more under protectionism. Okay, H1 students, no need to know that in depth. Alright, question 2. Okay, everyone got this right. Okay, so I'm not going to address this. I believe everyone got this right? Did I see that correctly? Yeah? Okay, everyone got this right, Alright, so sorry about this. Okay, we can read together. An economy changes its exchange rate at T. What does the J-curve effect shows happens at T and after T? Okay, so you can see that at T, when there is a worsening of your balance of trade, this must be an effect of a depreciation, or what we call devaluation. Okay, so the whole idea behind depreciation and devaluation is not that important. Okay, but for my H2 students, you may probably want to make a mental note. Devaluation can only be achieved by countries which adopt fixed exchange rate and managed float. Depreciation, okay, is adopted by countries that adopts floating exchange rate. So the difference between the two is not very different. It's just a way of coining the term. Okay, so you realize that eventually across time your balance of trade will improve. Okay, if the level will be higher than before. You see that? Okay, so you have to, the assumption here is Marshall-Lerner condition will apply. Okay, the eventual balance of trade is higher than the deficit. Okay, any questions, please type it out. Okay, so a revaluation simply means what? It simply means that there's an appreciation on the exchange rate. So assuming that Marshall-Lerner condition holds, it has to be a inverse J-curve. Inverse. Right? So a depreciation will result in a J. Appreciation or a revaluation will result in an inverse J. Okay, so this is the concept. Same rules apply. So under which circumstance will appreciating of the exchange rate causes the worsening of your balance of payment to be worsened the most? Okay, so two concepts that are going to be tested here. Number one, okay, appreciation. We're not looking at depreciation, looking at appreciation. Okay, and we know that an appreciation, okay, will worsen your balance of trade, right? Okay, but under which circumstance would it be the worst? Okay, so you can actually see here it's related to the earlier concept of a reverse J-curve effect. Okay, so Marshall-Lerner condition must hold in order for a eventual worsening in the long run. Okay, worsening in the long run. Okay, therefore, okay, the only condition that satisfy, okay, is item D. Alright, in any case, B and C cannot be your option because they all sum up to 1. Make sense? Okay, so if you want to pick A or D. Yeah, so in this case, D will be the correct option here. Okay, an economy experience a cost push inflation. Which combination of policies could reduce that? Okay, so earlier on I mentioned appreciation will reduce your what? Import costs, right? Okay, and you realize that for supply side policy, which we'll be covering in a short while, okay, we will be lowering minimum wage, or we could weaken the trade bargaining power of trade union, okay, or the wage bargaining power of trade union. Either of this, okay, will reduce your cost pressure. Okay, one is your import cost, the other one is your wage cost, and this will reduce your cost push inflation. Okay, is everyone clear about that? Yeah? Hey, remember, type it out. If you don't type, I don't know what you don't know. Okay, so what would be the most likely effect on an appreciation on balance of payment and current account and the rate of inflation? Okay, appreciation will worsen your balance of payment and current account. Okay, and it will reduce your rate of inflation. What does the MLC state in order for depreciation to cause an improvement in current account balance? Yeah, so I believe a lot of students were careless here. We are looking at the summation of both your exports and your imports. Summation of both. Okay, not individual. Okay, a country devalues its currency in hope of a reduction in the current account. What must happen? Okay, your Marshall-Lerner condition must hold. Summation of your exports and imports must be greater than 1. So you realize that in this particular quiz, there's an extra emphasis on Marshall-Lerner condition and J-curve effects on balance of trade, balance of payment, and inflation. So for those who didn't get that right earlier on, okay, I hope I have addressed all the conceptual gap. I hope this doesn't happen in your written assignments or in your upcoming block tests. Okay. So with this, okay, I'm going to toggle back to my main screen. Okay, I'm going to close this, and yes, okay, today we'll be moving on to supply side policy. Okay, I don't need to sing now. So this will be the very last policy that I will be covering. Okay, where is supply side policy? Do you all see that? Okay, so I believe everyone has learned this in school. Yes? Anyone haven't learned that in school? Okay, so somewhat covered in school. Okay, somewhat. Yes? Somewhat. Okay, so I will quickly run through the question objectives. And before I move on to the question objectives, okay, this will be the last policy I've mentioned. So right after this today's lesson, the H1 and the H2 track, okay, will split temporarily. Okay, so the H1, I won't be covering new concepts until we go on to conflicts of goal. Alright, so my H2 students with effect from, you got to check the term schedule. Okay, we'll be covering trade, okay, and protectionism. So just have a quick show of hands who have not learned trade in school. Theory of comparative advantage. Haven't, okay, so if you haven't learned, please turn up. Okay, if not, you'll be exceptionally lost. Okay, so for those who haven't learned, okay, sound out to me privately. Okay, I'll direct you to which are the notes that you can consider reading, okay, in case you haven't received your notes yet. Alright, so today we'll wrap up all the policies already. Okay, so we have all the demand sides that were covered earlier on, okay, and supply side, okay, will be emphasized today. Right, so there are a couple of objectives, but they are definitely short. So I believe all of you invested in this program, okay, invested your 2 hours here, okay, not for me to repeat what you can see in lecture notes, right? Yes? So I will be covering briefly about specific concepts such as different types of supply side policy. Okay, so you can see in your lecture notes that there are what? Okay, retraining, all this. I will be brief on those. I'll pick those that are important. I'll highlight which are important ones. Okay, so when I cover those, if there are anything they are not sure about, okay, please raise up to me. I'll just cover the essence of what you need to know. Okay, but our emphasis today will be on the macro goals and to differentiate fiscal policy and supply side policy. Okay, this is the one of the biggest conceptual error that a lot of H2 students, or even the H1 and H2 students, both of them get it wrong. Okay, So we'll be quickly looking at definition of supply side policies. We'll be looking at two categories of supply side policy: market oriented and interventionist. Can I have a quick show of hands? Which school doesn't group supply side policy like this? Quick show of hands. Market oriented and supply side and interventionist. Alright, so for those who raise your hand, does your school use long run and short run supply side policy? Long run and short run. Yeah, so I will also emphasize the difference of long run and short run. So I will stick to the mainstream, which is market oriented and interventionist. So the long run and short run side, I'll illustrate using a diagram. So whichever that your school cover is not wrong. It's just a different way to perceive supply side policy. Right? Market oriented policies can also be short run or long run. Interventionists can also be short run or long run. Clear? So remember to have a wider perspective. Your investment into this program is to widen your perspective. So take everything down here. With a wider view. Don't reject everything down here. So all these are condensed knowledge that I have from the previous cohorts. I will be running through different diagram approaches. I will show you what are the different ways to illustrate supply side policy. And this is the most difficult part: differentiating between fiscal policy and supply side policy. So later on, we probably will have a quiz. So I will also relate supply side policy to all your objectives. Do you see that? So the only thing that is on top of H1 students don't really need to know, is the balance of payment effect. But don't run away. I will teach you how to convert this into a AD effect, or economic growth. You can see it both ways. After that, we'll run through some limitations. We'll go through the context of how supply side policy is conducted in Singapore, and we'll be looking at how are they going to be tested in the exams. Is everyone clear about this? So we are expected to end about all these by maybe 10:20ish, I hope. And we will go for a break and then our time practice. Today's time practice is a case study essay question. It's one of the easier elementary questions that you will encounter. So I don't want to spoil that first. I'll quickly go through this and then we'll do things one step at a time. So I require you to have your book. Do you all have your book with you? So now let's look up for the definition. The definition, we have your supply side policies. What do we have here? Give me a second. Let me open up something else. Great. Alright, so we can see that supply side policies, they are instruments to promote your increase in your aggregate supply by enhancing your productive capacities of economy. So primarily, we are concerned about increase in your LRAS. So any factors that results in the increase in your LRAS, will be loosely considered as a supply side policy. Alright. So increasingly, there are also different approaches. So reduction of your production costs, in a modern day context, is also accepted as a supply side policy because it increases your AS curve downwards. So the focus is on LRAS. Yes, the focus is on LRAS. But like I've said, in modern days, there are supply side policies that are centric around SRAS. So your objective is to look out for effects on LRAS first before considering SRAS. And there are some policies that affect both SRAS and LRAS. I will show you that. My RI students probably don't use LRAS and SRAS. So all you need to is to focus on the horizontal and the vertical part of the AS curve. So the illustration will be the same. Is everyone clear? Focus on LR then SR, or focus on the vertical part then the horizontal part. So we realize that we are actually done with these the factors or determinants that affects your AS curve. I think was covered under the previous lesson on ADAS, right? So it's closely tied. I'm not going to touch on the earlier concepts. I'm just going to jump straight to market oriented and interventionist. Okay, so now let's look out for page 110. Okay, I'm going to guide you on how to play around with 110, everyone. Okay, so for supply side policy, we need to know which one is going to be more widely tested, right? In terms of case study, in terms of essay, in terms of examples that are used. Maybe let's utilize the chat function. Okay, which illustrations were most commonly represented in school that you can recall freshly from your head? What kind of supply side policy do you remember from your schooling? And those who are not in school from your schooling days. Why? So many. Just one. I just need one. What's the number one most representative supply side policy that you remember? Okay, so I'm just going to read out education, tax and unemployment benefits, tax incentive, retraining of workers, skill future, okay, unemployment-based supply side policy. So all these points out to what? Okay, it points out to labor, right? Okay, so retraining, okay, or policies that are revolving around retraining, okay, is the most common one. You see that? I'm not saying that the rest are less important. Okay, it's just that you need to be concerned about which are the ones that are more likely to be tested. So from an exam perspective, okay, it follows the Pareto rule. Are you familiar with the Pareto rule? Alright, if you're going to do a Google search, okay, the Pareto rule tells you that, okay, everything in life follows the 80-20 rule. Okay, so the market-oriented side, okay, will occur 20% of the time. Interventionist 80% of the time. Why is it that interventionists are more focused? It's just like fiscal policy, right? Okay, fiscal policy we focus on non-discretionary because there is a case of using it, right? Okay, likewise for interventionists, it means that the government will actively intervene, okay, to achieve specific objectives. In this case, okay, they will actively intervene, okay, provide skills future, okay, and to reduce job skill mismatch, okay, by raising the productivity of your workers. So these are some of the objectives, okay, that you need to be exceptionally wary about when we talk about retraining. Okay, so when you read through all your policies, okay, make sure you have the end goal in mind. What is this trying to solve? R&D. What is it trying to solve? Okay, is it trying to lower production costs? Is it trying to promote more innovation? Or is it trying to promote more export competitiveness? Okay, and with this in mind, then you can relate to, okay, whether it affects your AS curve, your SRAS, LRAS, or even AD. It could also it could also affect your AD. Okay, so from an exam perspective, interventionist is more focused on education and training. And just now somebody brought up a exemplary example of education and training, skills future. So for those who still have your school notes with you, look out for, okay, the what is mentioned in skills future. Okay, so especially for H2 students, you need examples for essay. Then you can quickly cite them. For my H1 students, most likely it will be stated in the case study. Okay, so it's more of an application basis. So you have to be very concerned about what? Okay, key terms like training. Okay, key terms like apprenticeship. Key terms like mentorship. Okay, all this tells you that there is some form of training involved. Okay, and it is very highly likely that they are supply side related. Is everyone clear? Okay, another key term. I'm so sorry. Don't know whether you can hear my dog. Very irritating. Can y'all hear that? You want to see dog? Anyone? Nobody. Yeah. Okay, never mind. Another key term that you want to be concerned about, okay, is the concept of disruptive technologies, innovation. Disruptive technologies normally results in structural unemployment. Okay, and supply side policy in the form of education and retraining normally comes in, okay, as the missing jigsaw puzzle to correct that. Is everyone clear? So be sensitive to keywords like this. Okay, then your approach to the question will be haywire. Okay, so for market-oriented, okay, they are less emphasized. Okay, so how we can interpret, okay, market-oriented is hands-off approach. Okay, or one-time hands-on, then the rest will leave it to the free market. Okay, interventionist is an ongoing hands-on approach by the government. Okay, increase in government spending on skills future. Okay, there will be an ongoing basis. Right? Okay, so there are some down here that I will not illustrate. I won't be illustrating them in depth. Okay, you can relate to your school notes. Okay, and you can try to tally them. Okay, so I will probably just want to talk about number 1 and 2, privatization and deregulation. Okay, these two are closely related to concepts of firms and decision. Okay, under H2. Okay, but if you are a H1 student, you also don't need to be too concerned. Okay, privatization and deregulation simply means that this is to promote more competition. Okay, and when there is a higher emphasis for promoting of more competition, producers will find the lowest cost production means, or producers will be more productive, efficient. Okay, and they will experience an increase in your production capacity. Okay, so some of the examples that you need to be concerned about for privatization and deregulation, you can look out for what is happening in our utilities market. Okay, in the past was monopolized by SP Power, but now there are a lot more. Okay, utilities market. Okay, another example that you want to be concerned about, okay, would be our telco market. Okay, especially the mobile virtual network operators, or what we call MVNOs. Okay, I've seen this being tested in case studies several times. Okay, deregulation simply means that you allow more competitions to participate in this telco industry. Why is that so? Okay, from a macro perspective, we can see that this is to promote higher production capacity in the long run. Okay, from the micro perspective, probably more productive and more allocative efficiency. Okay, so anything that you are not sure how this is actually how the rest is actually illustrated, keep me posted. Oh yes, there's one more that I want to talk about. Okay, I'm not sure where I think it belongs here. I think it belongs here. Trade union. Okay, so you have to know that for Singapore, there is this unique arrangement called the tripartism. Have you all heard of the concept of tripartism? Yes? Okay, so in your notes, it should be coined under the term of reducing the power of trade union. Right? So we know that trade unions are known to bargain wages. Right? Okay, they are known to enforce a higher wages for all the labor that's within the union. In the United States, in UK, quite common. Okay, all the teachers or whatever particular industry will join a union, to be protected. Okay, so in Singapore, it's slightly different. Okay, the trade union, is what we call National Trade Union Congress. Okay, please don't write this. Okay, for Singapore, is a little bit different in the sense that the trade union, like I said, it's a tripartism, meaning to say, it represents the interests of all parties. It is not necessarily favoring the labor. Okay, and that's why you often see that, don't quote Mr. Teo, don't quote Mr. Teo here. You often see that, wages down here are actually more or less suppressed. Because NTUC, I wouldn't say hasn't been doing a good job in maintaining labor's interest, but they have to take into account of firms and employers' interests as well. That's why it's called a tripartism. The government, the firms, and the employer and the trade union have to work closely together. Okay, so trade union don't really, this example of trade union don't really work well for Singapore. Okay, so if you see other countries that talk about reduction of trade union power, that could work. Okay, then this could lower your production costs. Okay, in terms of lowering of minimum wage. Singapore, there's no minimum wage to start with. Oh, okay, so remember, some of the examples don't fit nicely one. Oh, okay, so avoid this example if you encounter this about trade union. Okay, so I just like to sum up, no matter is it market-oriented or interventionist, no matter is it short run or long run, okay, my personal favorite is education. Alright? And if your school uses short run and long run, then you have to look out from all these. Okay, and you have to decide whether it affects your production cost, whether it affects your production capacity, or whether it affects both of them. Most of them, they are quite clear-cut. Right? For instance, education and retraining likely to be production capacity. Right? So sometimes it can reduce your production cost as well. Sometimes. Clear? Okay, so I will skip this, okay, and I will move on to the diagram approach. Okay, interventionist, I mentioned this earlier on. Okay, the emphasis on interventionist is way higher. Alright, so from the diagram perspective, this is how is it going to look like. Okay, there are 3 diagram perspectives that I'd like you to copy. Alright, and they will have similar effects. Okay, it is just that the way how you draw them is going to be slightly different. Alright, so the first one that is going to be the most representative is a increase in your production capacity. Okay, so make sure, okay, when you illustrate this, okay, you are going to draw at the intermediate region. If not, you don't see the immediate effects. Okay, so you can see that as a result of, let's say, increase in your production capacity through higher productivity of your workers and retraining, all those kind of thing. Okay, we can see that, okay, the effects on your real national income and your price, okay, is going to go in opposite direction. So price is going to go down and income is going to go up. Okay, so this is the effects of your LRAS. Alright, like I've said, if you don't draw at the intermediate region, then you are going to have a problem of showing the lowering of the price level. Okay, so make sure you keep your illustration at the intermediate region. Okay, the next one, okay, is not necessarily at the intermediate region. You can also draw it at the Keynesian region. But for simplicity, okay, let's keep it at the intermediate region. Okay, we can show this. Okay, so the next one, you can consider a lowering of your production costs. Okay, or any effects that shift your AS curve downwards. You see that? Then we can see that the immediate effects will be the same. Okay, lowering of your price level and increasing in your real national output. So some of the examples that you probably see here will be, for instance, okay, lowering of your minimum wage, okay, because of a reduction of your trade union power. This will lower your labor costs. Then in that case, AS curve will shift downwards. So sometimes, okay, a wage credit scheme. Okay, later on you will see in Singapore's example. Okay, wage credit scheme, subsidizing of wages will reduce your wage costs. Okay, leaving your production capacity intact. Right, this will also shift down your AS curve. Okay, so things that are related to tax and subsidy that plays around with your production costs are primarily AS driven. Okay, or your SRAS driven. Okay, it will shift your horizontal part of your AS downwards. Okay, so I just want to emphasize, okay, from AYE's perspective, this is SRAS. Clear? So selected schools also use a combination of both. My RI friends, okay, this is what your school loves to use, yeah? Okay, for the rest, take it with a pinch of salt, okay? Whether your school use it or not, okay, I leave it to you. Okay, so my RI friends will often see this. Downward and rightward shift. Okay, for my friends here who are schoolers, you can consider this approach as well. It's pretty good in the sense that it can, some of the policies will affect both. Okay, for instance, a tax incentive on R&D, okay, will have effects on your production costs because it lowers your production cost of R&D, and in the long run, okay, you are going to experience greater innovation, greater productivity. Then, okay, you will increase your LRAS as well. Okay, so you can see that this is a simultaneous effect on your SRAS and LRAS, simultaneous. Okay, SR and LR. Let me label this. So I would just like to have quick common consensus. Which school uses the third approach? I know RI, no need to raise RI. RI's hands don't need to be raised. But the rest? Do you all use the third approach? No, nah. If don't, then stick to your own school. Draw this at your own risk. And my schooler's friend can join me in this, can? So you see, Mr. Teo's course is very practical. I just show you what are the important things, okay? And you just need to know the correct concept and apply the correct diagram. Okay, market-oriented can be breakdown in short run and long run, no problem. Interventionist, the same. Okay, so long as you are sensitive to keywords on fog. Okay, how does all these market-oriented or interventionist affect your fog? Okay, or your COG? See, all these will affect your AS curve. Okay, are you all done? Are you all done copying now? Yeah, can I move on to the next? Can If you're not done copying down, you can stay back during the break. I will flash this again. No worries about that. Alright, so this one exceptionally crucial. How do we differentiate between fiscal policy and supply side policy? Okay, so now I give you all a quiz. Okay, it's not a Kahoot quiz. Okay, so the example would be this. Okay, government spending on school or on education. Okay, can y'all type out? Okay, what do you think is this? Fiscal policy or supply side policy? Or option C? Option C is your interpretation. See, I have a lot. We have supply side, supply fiscal, both fiscal and LR does not affect AD. So which one is the correct one? So a better question, okay, or a better way to address that is to question back Mr. Teo, what is the context? Right? So you have to identify what is the problem that is mentioned in the extract. I've mentioned this many times. Whatever solution that you need to propose must be related to the existing problem that you face. Alright? So if the problem that you encounter is a recession, for instance, then you realize that massive government spending in the short run, okay, can be fiscal, is viewed to be a fiscal policy because you want to promote actual growth. So you have to be sensitive about which problem that you are facing. However, if the extract or the case tells you that, okay, we want to promote higher productivity, okay, we want to correct structural unemployment, then it will be supply side policy. Okay, so depending on which situation that's provided to you, okay, we can have either fiscal policy with supply side effects or supply side policy with demand effects. Because we realize that if we focus on supply side policy, in the short run, there is still involvement in government spending. So there must be demand effects. Okay, but you need to know which one is the focus, which one is the primary focus. Okay, and the primary focus is tied to whatever question or whatever problem that you deem to be a priority. Is everyone clear about this? Important, must differentiate the both of them. So primarily, you just focus on the supply side effect. If you determine that as a supply side problem, okay, the effects on demand, okay, you can skip that. It's not the focus, not the focus. Just like fiscal policy with supply side effect, is supply side effect the focus? It's good to have, okay, but the primarily effects is to promote actual growth. Okay, so get the order right, get your priorities right. That's what I'm trying to say. And your priority depends on what problem you're facing. So far, so good. Okay, so I am going to move on to the objectives part. Okay, so supply side policy with economic growth. Okay, this one I will show you with a diagram. Okay, you realize that for supply side policy and how it affects economic growth, we can see that the first two diagrams shows us two different illustrations, right? Okay, when there's an increase in your production capacity, this is potential growth. I've just labeled this 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, when there is a fall in or there's a downward shift in your AS curve, no change in your actual growth, potential growth, okay, this will be an actual growth. So supply side policy and economic growth, it really depends. Most of the time, it is item 1. You need to identify from the extract. Okay, is it the effects on potential growth, or is it the effects on your actual growth? Okay, or it could be both potential and actual growth. Okay, either under item 3. Okay, my RI friends, my RI lecturers like to use this to show both. Okay, for some strange reason. Personally, I don't like. Okay, I like to keep it like that, 1 and 2, separate. Clear? Okay, so do you all have a good understanding on how actual growth and potential growth can be achieved with supply side policy? Okay, so potential growth will be item 1. Okay, and actual growth will be item 2. Most of the time, they are independent. RI friends, you can consider item 3 to show both. Now, this one, supply side policy and unemployment. Okay, which kind of unemployment are we looking out for? We realize that there are only three main kinds of unemployment. Please type out. I just want to do a quick recap. Which are the main 3? I said 3 only. How come I got 4? Main 3. Pick 3 out of the 4. No need 4. Alright, so the 3 kinds of unemployment are structural, cyclical, frictional. Please get that right. Okay, I will not accept any other things. Structural, cyclical, frictional. Yeah, so if you're not hearing the right thing, probably get a cup of coffee, or just like what our friend Nino is doing. Have a cup of tea and grab some caffeine to start your mind. Okay, because we are going to move on to the time practice in a short while. Okay, so you have to be concerned about which kind of unemployment will supply side policy target. I've mentioned this earlier on just now, right? Okay, so in order to address the main problem, we need to look out for what the sub causes of the problem. Okay, so if we are looking out to correct structural unemployment, okay, structural, then our favorite would be retraining. Okay, or what we actually used earlier on as interventionist supply side policy, right? Okay, providing education and retraining, skills future. Okay, this is the most targeted and direct way to address job skill mismatch. Skills future. All of you are good friends of skills. Whenever skills future is tested or supply side policy is tested, all my students can illustrate that without doubt. Okay, but the challenge lies here. Okay, you have to identify that sometimes, okay, within a macro problem there are multiple types, right? So when we look at unemployment, we cannot look at structural one-sided. Okay, there could be what? Demand deficient. Okay, and when we look at demand deficient, can supply side policy target demand deficient? Cannot. When there's a lack of demand. Okay, so this one really tricky. You have to be careful. It depends. Okay, so in textbook examples, demand deficient can only be corrected with demand side policies, right? You have to match the correct problem with the correct policy. Agreed? Okay, but okay, in modern days, like I say, modern days means that recent development in school curriculum. Okay, short run supply side policies, okay, are also deemed to be of equivalent. For instance, if we look at item 2, okay, by lowering your production cost, okay, or whichever means that can lower your cost, okay, this is going to increase your production and your derived demand for labor. Okay, that also works, but like I've said, it does not target the root problem of a lack in demand. It does not address that. So this is a short-term measure. Okay? So it really depends on what do you have in the extract. If the extract is entirely silent about other demand side policies, and this actually comes out as a candidate for you to pick, then you can consider this. If not, you always prioritize. Okay, you always prioritize demand side policies, fiscal, monetary, or exchange rate in the form of depreciation. And if all the cases are exhausted, there is no demand side policy to start with, then we look at supply side policies that are centric around cost. Cost centric. Okay, that lowers your AS curve, SRAS curve. So you find this course very practical, right? Okay, I'm sharing with all of you how questions are set with the end goal in mind, so that you guys don't repeat whatever mistakes that's happened in other students. All right, so frictional unemployment, primarily through what? Okay, I think I've covered this briefly under unemployment, right? Okay, it's also a form of supply side policy. Okay, I would probably consider this interventionist. Okay, in the form of closing the what's that? Information gap. All right, we understood that frictional unemployment occurs when there is what? Okay, there is a turnover, right? Okay, and the labor and the employer do not have the full information about who is looking for a job and who is looking to be hired. Okay, therefore we have what? Okay, job portals. Okay, we have LinkedIn. Okay, and all these are form of interventionists. Okay, I think so lah. Okay, but it's not really categorized under interventionist or market oriented. So out of these three, okay, I will want you to focus on the first two. The first two will be widely tested. The third one not so much, because frictional has always been there. It's never been a problem. Okay, job, skill, workfare. Right, correct. Alright, supply side policy and price stability. I'm going to move on there. Okay, realize that supply side policy and price stability has always been compatible goals. Okay, it will not worsen your inflation. Why? Okay, because for interpretation on number one, you realize that when we engage in supply side policy, what do? We actually lengthen the spare capacity. Okay, so that we will relieve any demand side pressures or alleviate any demand side pressures. Okay, likewise for two, okay, you lower your production cost, okay, and you will alleviate your cost push inflation. So number two is primarily designed to reduce cost push inflation. Okay, number one, okay, you can design to is in a way, okay, it is to address demand pull inflation. okay, by ensuring that your production capacity is increasing continuously, okay, to cater for future increase in your AD. Okay, I will not be addressing item 3. I think item 1 and 2 is good enough. Okay, price stability. Okay, so far so good. So price stability also comes into the concept of sustained growth as well. Okay, actual growth and potential growth. Oh, okay, so why do we need both actual and potential growth? Okay, because we want to achieve economic growth in a non-inflationary environment. Alright, the last one, okay, is exceptionally tricky, okay, on balance of payment. Okay, so for my H1 students, you can probably treat it like a net export kind of illustration. For my H2 students, okay, we are going to look out for balance of payment. Okay, and to be more specific, we are going to look out for your current account and balance of trade. So how do we use supply side policy to influence your balance of trade, to improve it? Okay, to be more specific, X minus M goes up. Okay, so there are two primary means. Okay, I'm just going to show you in a nutshell. We are concerned about this key concept called export competitiveness again. Okay, export competitiveness comes in two forms. Number one, we are looking out for price competitiveness. Second one, non-price competitiveness. So a simple illustration, let's start with the easier one. Okay, a simple illustration would be non-price. Okay, so for instance, okay, when the economy is more productive, okay, through a R&D to produce a specific new kind of good, okay, or a better version of the export, right? This will drive up the taste and preference, okay, of the export, and this will result in higher net exports, higher demand for exports. Okay, my head is blocking, right? Okay, maybe I'll just reverse the arrow. Higher taste and preference for the good, higher demand for exports, okay, and your X minus M will be improved. So we are targeting at the non-price aspect of the export. So things that you want to talk about will be the quality of the good, of the export that's going to be enhanced. And offhand, I don't have any good examples. Yeah. So this one is the easier approach, okay, to illustrate balance of trade. Easier. Okay, the other one that is more widely adopted in school, but also more tricky. Okay, you have to work out the channel. So it is actually related to our earlier concept of price stability. Remember, when we conduct supply side policy, regardless is a short run or long run effect, okay, there will be a fall in your what? Okay, there will be a fall in your unit cost of production. And okay, with a fall in your unit cost of production, this will lead to a fall in your general price level in the domestic economy. And to be more specific, this is more of a short run kind. Okay, if you want me to label. Okay, more of a second illustration, you see this? Okay, more of this. Okay, unit cost of production. Okay, or item 3 also fulfills this criteria. Okay, so this specific sequence, okay, is well documented in most school notes. So stick to what I'm going to say. Okay, a fall in your general price level will lead to a fall in your price of your exports. Okay, domestic price of your exports will go down. And that, okay, you need to make this key assumption. Okay, what is the key assumption that you still remember, or if your school covers that? How do we actually, you realize that this is price, right? Eventually, we want to result in higher X minus M. So this is where it comes into the picture. So some of the students type out MLC here. Like I said, MLC, we want to look out for exchange rate. Are there any depreciations here? No depreciation, right? This is domestic cost, domestic price level. So please do not abuse MLC here. MLC only works with exchange rate. This is domestic price level. So the correct assumption that you want to make, okay, good treasure, okay, is one of the better halves of your of the MLC, which is your exports elasticity. So you can assume this to be greater than 1. So with a fall in domestic price of exports, okay, your quantity demanded for your exports will go up more than proportion. Okay, and this will lead to an increase in your export revenue. Okay, so this is the full sequence. So common mistake, okay, please pen this down. No MLC is required here. Don't bring in MLC. Because there is no exchange rate changes. There are no appreciation nor depreciation here. Okay? So exceptionally useful to relate to balance of trade. Okay, or X minus M. Okay, so for my H1 students, you can potentially consider this and relating this to AD. Okay, higher AD. Okay, for my H1 students only. My H2 students, if it's asking balance of trade, stop at X minus M. Good enough. Alright. Any more questions? Type it out. This is a tricky concept. I don't expect you guys to get it right in the first try. Okay, remember, the one in green is easier. The one in red requires you to make certain key assumptions. Okay, and it has to go through a specific route. Okay, and all these key terms must happen, especially for one in red. Alright, limitations. Okay, let's look out for, are tariffs considered supply side policy? Yes, okay, I believe it is considered supply side policy. You see that? Removal of trade barriers. You see? When you remove trade barriers, this actually promote higher competition. But it depends on what is the intent. Okay, so if the intent is to block imports, then there is protectionism. If the intent is to promote greater competition, there is supply side policy. Clear? So get the intent right. Tariffs will be covered under protectionism. Okay, for H2 students. Okay, and for my H2 students, careful. Okay, because at the time of shooting, this is 2022, okay, trade hasn't been covered for the past 2 years. Right? So the things that are covered in school could be quite hazy and quite or quite out of touch. Lecturers can be out. Even Mr. Teo also need to read up. Okay, after 2 years of not covering that particular topic. Yeah, so you all have to put in extra effort on your trade. Because this is the first year that is going to resume trade. Clear? Alright, limitations. Okay, page 110. Okay, there are a lot of limitations here. Okay, so some of the limitations that you bring in, make sure you elaborate on that. So one of the biggest issue is students fail to elaborate. So for instance, one of the most highly abused limitation is number 2. So some of the students simply sign off, supply side policy is highly dependent on the effectiveness or the training or the attitude of workers. Full stop. So what is it got to do with the goal? Right? If your goal is to correct structural unemployment, connect the dots. Then we can see that in the short run, okay, because of ineffectiveness, because of poor reception, we cannot lower structural unemployment in the short run. Okay, there will still be prevailing job skill mismatch because elderly workers are not receptive. So it's all about connecting the dots, not simply regurgitation of whatever that you see in the notes. Okay, so this one is my personal favorite, but use but not abuse. So there are a lot more you can read through yourself. Another one that is quite common, I'm so sorry for toggling, okay, just suddenly occurred to me. Okay, they will be sharing the same constraint as fiscal policy. It requires spending. Okay, if the country is running a huge budget deficit, they may not be in a position to spend. Okay, so this is shared one across fiscal and supply side. Right, now let's look out for Singapore's context, page 111. Okay, so you can see that at the point of publishing this book, this was about 2 to 3 years back. Okay, so some of the examples are already no longer relevant. Skills Future, yes. Okay, wage credit scheme, I think they have already removed that already. Yeah, so promoting entrepreneurship and innovation, I believe the last example is still valid. So whichever examples that you use, okay, careful, you just need to know a few good examples offhand, especially for my H2 students for essay. H1 student no need to know all this. Why? Because everything is given to you in the extract. Yeah, so all you need to do is just to apply. Clear? Okay, so do a quick recap, okay, of the examples, refresh the examples, especially the ones that are in your school will probably be more relevant. Yeah, I'll probably ask the editor or the publisher to update this as well. Okay, so to quickly sign off, okay, the emphasis of supply side policy is on education. Okay, you have to differentiate between fiscal and supply side policy. Okay, and you need to systematically relate supply side policy to the respective goals. Okay, maybe I'll add this in. Okay, SSP and respective goal. And whatever goal that you have in mind can be broken down. Okay, so if you look at economic growth, actual potential growth. So different aspects of SSP will affect actual and potential growth differently. Unemployment, just now we went through the activity. Price stability, okay, we actually went through, right? Okay, the scenario in the first one is more targeted to address demand pull inflation by lengthening the spare capacity or the excess capacity. Okay, scenario 2, okay, downward shift in your AS curve is more targeted at reducing cost push inflation. Okay, likewise, supply side policy can also affect your balance of payment through your balance of trade. Okay, that one, okay, I want to emphasize on this again. This part in red is difficult and prone to errors and misconception. Please work on that. Okay? So with this, okay, I think we are doing really good in time. Okay, let's go for a quick break. Okay, when we are back, okay, we'll start with our time practice. The faster you are back, the faster we can end today. Can? Thanks. Could you go back to supply side policy and unemployment? Sure. Thanks. Cheryl, you there? Cheryl, if you are there, turn on your webcam. Yeah. Wow, so many questions suddenly coming in. I cannot handle. Okay, I'll reply Cheryl. Cheryl.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, Cheryl. Devaluation can only take place under fixed exchange rate or managed float. Same for revaluation. Devaluation, revaluation. Nino, would it be possible to add the questions to the answering option. What do you mean, Nino? Maybe unmute yourself. It's break time lah. You can just talk to me lah.
Yeah, I find the link that I send you.
Okay. Add the questions. Okay, can you send it to me that I understand what you're saying? No, sorry, Nino. I just saw I just saw the question and answer part. Yeah, so I'll implement this in the future. Thanks for your feedback. I don't know what's the key difference. I'll probably find it out in a short while.
Because currently we only have the 4 options to answer, then we have to look at your screen to get a question.
Ah.
So by doing this, you can look at our own screen and then see the question. It's a bit clearer.
Okay. Yeah, I'll try that out. Thanks for your feedback. Yeah, I didn't know this option exists. Thanks. Right. So for those who are back, you should be seeing an extract on this. Okay. So let me know. Type it out. Okay. So I know that we are seeing the same question. Okay, thanks. Thank you so much. Okay, this is one of the more responsive class for a long time. Thank you. All right, so yes, okay, yeah, Aiden, yeah, even they're back. Okay, you can check okay whether we are seeing the same question. So I'm going to go through an outline. Okay, so do you need an outline or you want to DIY? A-level style or outline? Or look at the question first and let me know. Okay, I tell you what, for those who want to DIY, just unplug your earbuds, okay, and then don't look at the screen. For those who want I will set a timer later, okay, the timer. So those who actually DIY will have more time to write. Oh, okay, for those who want to hear what I have to say, okay, then you can put your earbuds on. Can? Okay, so the approach for this question, you realize that the question tells you this is best way. Right? Supply side policy, best way, low unemployment. So I have covered this before earlier on. Whichever policy that you want to propose, okay, you have to scrutinize the problem. Right? So what are the main problems that are present? So even if unemployment, you got to look into cyclical and structural. And the way how this question is designed is such a way that structural will be used to correct this. Okay, and you realize that best way, right? Okay, something else will be used to correct cyclical. So remember, make sure you bring in an alternative. Okay, and the alternative should be targeting demand division. Right? I do not recommend you to propose supply side policy to target cyclical because it does not address the root problem. And I don't think it's present in the extract. Okay, in terms of policies to lower labor costs or lower your cost of production. Okay, pick something else. Okay, so this is what I have for you. Okay, as a very simple outline, and make sure you synthesize. Synthesize, okay, you have to justify supply side policy. Okay, whether is it the best way or not. Yeah. Okay, so with that, okay, I'm going to give you 20 minutes. It's a lot of time, Okay, but don't squander it. Okay, let's go. Alright, time's up. Stop writing. Thank you. So with this, okay, let's turn on our webcam, everyone. Okay, I will activate the answer key in a short while, so there is no panic. I won't be sending the answer key over on the group chat. So I would like you guys to digest what are the things that I'm going to present to you in a short while. If there's an alternate approach with regards to how to approach this question, keep me posted. Okay, I will also like to hear alternate perspective down here. Okay, so we have a supply side policy question, and here we go. Okay, so remember that the submission deadline for today, okay, is 12 midnight. I think it's a lot of time now, huh? Okay, so please submit punctually. Okay, I'm expecting 8 pieces of scripts down here. Sorry, 9. Maybe before we go through, I would like to. Do we have time? Anyone like to volunteer? Outline. How would you approach this question? And those who volunteer normally experience better improvement. Nobody wants to be in a hot seat. Hey, sure. JC students, yep. Okay, let's go through together. Alright, so I would like you to look out for definition. Okay, so I will be introducing supply side policy and fiscal policy. Okay, one to target structural. Okay, one to target demand deficient. How do we know that there's demand deficient? And how do we know there's structural? Because the question already tells us that we need unemployment. And it is your role, your responsibility to break it up into two. So, question, do we necessarily need fiscal policy or can we replace it with something else? Sure. Okay, I'm going to reject this view. Okay, I'm going to reject monetary policy or interest rate. Okay, because I think all of you should know by now that Singapore does not adopt interest rate based monetary policy. So, if you realize that you're using interest rate, whatever that you have written is rubbish in, rubbish out. Okay? So, if you conduct monetary policy, it has to be exchange rate. Okay, and what kind of exchange rate we need to use? Okay, we have to consider a depreciation of Sing dollar. Clear? Only these two are accepted. Supply side and okay, a depreciation of Sing dollar. Okay, to promote demand effects. Okay? So, I want you all to look at the extract again. Okay, there are some traces where okay, demand deficient is present. And you can see here. Okay, global growth. Okay, protracted oil price slump. It could suggest that okay, there is a downturn in oil. This shifting trade flows, it tells you that it's no longer merely cyclical. There could be other forms of unemployment. Okay, and you can see that okay, there's a greater emphasis to China. Right? Okay, so China is sourcing goods from regional, okay, not necessarily from Singapore. Okay, so you can consider either of these three, okay, to relate them to cyclical unemployment. Okay, and the fourth one that I've mentioned earlier on about disruptive change, this is the part okay, that you have to suspect that there is structural unemployment. Very important to relate this. Okay, and how do we know that? You see this? So it's all about being sensitive to keywords. Okay, so these are the two main kinds of okay, problem that's present in the extract. And whenever you see skills future, you see this? Skills upgrading, shifting mindsets. Then all the more you have to suspect that okay, supply side policy is to correct structural unemployment. Okay, so I'm going to go through okay, what do you need okay, for each respective body paragraph. So remember, identifying the problem is the most important aspect. So you have to relate okay, skills future to interventionist supply side policy in the form of upgrading and closing the job skill mismatch, such that workers will acquire a new skill set. You can potentially relate to case materials that you've seen in the extract tree. That they are growing sectors, but they are not fulfilled by people without the correct skill set. I believe PM Lee also mentioned something more. See, there are thousands of jobs to be filled, but people lack the skill set to join them. Alright, so make sure you address this job skill. Very important. Alright, limitation. Make sure you cite the limitation of supply side policy. You can talk about a long time to materialize. And Singapore economy may still face unemployment in the short run. So you want to relate this to time period. Alright, I'm going to move on to the next part. So I just want you to check the outline for supply side policy. Have you all related it to a particular problem of structural unemployment? Have you all cited case materials? And have you all listed a limitation? Right, so fiscal policy or a depreciation in your exchange rate could work. So on hindsight, I would think that depreciation of the exchange rate could be a little bit better. And here's my reasoning. We can actually see that down here, because of shifting trade flows. China is no longer sourcing from Singapore, for instance. Then in that case, a depreciation in your exchange rate could result in export competitiveness. But the risk of using this is that the illustration is going to be significantly lengthier than fiscal policy, and you have to hit all the correct notes. You have to illustrate Marshall-Lerner condition. So this is the reason why there's an aversion to use monetary exchange rate policy unless otherwise stated. Alright, so someone brought up, can I generally address fiscal and supply side policy first without reference to the extract? Alright, so if you generally illustrated without reference to the extract, you will generally get generally marks. And you cannot afford to be general down here. Unless you are generous. If your surname is generous, then go ahead. So this is how I would recommend. Go straight. Relate directly to the extract. So if you were to go one big round, you waste a lot of time illustrating. Yeah? Thanks for asking. Next, fiscal policy. You want to illustrate increasing of government spending and lowering of your tax rate. And this is to promote demand deficient unemployment. Alright, so you realize that the concept that I have used here, the multiple shifts in your AD, they are designed specifically to illustrate or to correct demand deficient unemployment. Do you see that? So this has been covered using 6 steps ADAS framework. I've covered this multiple times. I'm not going to illustrate this again. I just want you all to work on your step work. Have you all identified the components of your AD shifting? It could be a increase in C or a increase in I. If you brought up increase in C, make sure you relate to disposable income and purchasing power. If you talk about increasing in I, make sure you relate to post-tax profits. These are very standard illustrations for fiscal policy. You possibly don't need MEI. This is optional. Don't need MEI. But if you want to illustrate how fiscal policy and MEI comes into the picture, remember we covered MEI before under monetary policy. We covered upward and downward movement along the MEI. So fiscal policy, we are looking at shifting the entire MEI curve. Holding your interest rate or MEI the same. There'll be higher level of investment, lower level of investment. Do we need the multiplier process? The multiplier process is crucial because you realize that all this not only tells you that there is multiple increase in your real national income, but remember, your labor is a derived demand. So it will show you multiple increase in derived demand for labor. So I've mentioned this before. You want to skip any steps, do it at your own risk. If you don't have time, then you have to look out Okay, which are the steps that I can afford to skip? Okay, so I would not recommend skipping multiplier effect unnecessarily. Okay, multiplier effect is tied together with demand deficient unemployment. Is everyone clear? So if you realize that if you're not having any breakthroughs, there's a very specific reason. Okay, you stuck to the old ways, you're not open to new ideas, and then you'll be capped. Okay, your investment into this program is to be exposed to new ideas. Okay, so I'm just showing you another way to do things. Okay, that is going to be more complete and is recommended. So for those who don't have the 6 steps, please catch up with ADAS, the lesson on AD and AS. Okay, the 6 steps are well documented there. Okay, so multiplier is step 5. Okay, you're not illustrating multiplier properly. Step 6 would be your objective. So you want to relate this to demand deficient unemployment. So therefore, there are 2 particular key phrases that's in the 6 steps that are important. Number 1, okay, you want to illustrate how there is an initial fall in derived demand for increase in derived demand for labor. Number 2, as a result of the multiplier process, this further drives up derived demand for labor. Okay, so your demand deficient unemployment will continue to fall. Now, the initial spending in your AD can only reduce demand deficient unemployment for the first time. You need the multiple spending and respending to drive it further to the right. Clear? So the only optional phrase that I do not, that you can consider skipping is the MEI part. So yes, okay, if I talk about initial fall but not the further fall, like I've said, okay, do this, if you want to do this at your own pace, at your own, okay, then this is at your own risk. Yeah, okay, this is not advocated in the program. Okay, if I want to bring in the ADAS framework, bring it out in full. Okay, if not, continue with your old ways, and okay, and we see how it goes. Yeah. So let's quickly move on to limitation. Please insert a limitation so you can talk about small multiplier value. Yeah, I don't think budget deficit is a good enough illustration down here. Okay, because this is Singapore. Yeah, so I think small multiplier value is the best out of all. Unless you guys have any other alternate illustration for limitation here for fiscal policy. If not, I think this is the best for now. Yeah, so I hope I've addressed all the concerns that were typed out. Yes, I'm sorry if I sound very sarcastic today. Okay, it's not intentional. I apologize because today there's a lot of absenteeism today, and yeah, it kind of affected me. But I apologize if I sound sarcastic, but it's not my intent to do that. Okay, hopefully you guys can accept that. All right, okay, I'm going to move on. Okay, to the last part. Okay, on building synthesis. All right, so like I've said, there is do we need to draw the shift in AS for supply side policy? Not really, not necessary, because the problem that you want to correct is structural unemployment. And structural unemployment don't need to draw diagram unless you want to show potential growth. Demand deficient, then you need to show. Okay, multiple shifts in your AD. Alright, okay, so the last part, listen carefully. Let's finish up strong. A lot of students will tell me combination of policies. Okay, check your answer. Got combination on anyone? Combination? Yes? Combination. Why combination? So this is the part that I want you all to learn. Okay, so is this the first time that you hear me using Tinbergen rule? First time? Yeah, so this is a particular good approach, okay, or a particular good ending or synthesis for combination policies based question. Pay attention, okay, I need your last 5 minutes to wrap this up. What does Tinbergen rule means? Okay, Tinbergen rule simply means that, okay, for the number of problems that you face, it must be met with the equal number of macro policies. This is what Tinbergen rule means. So let me repeat. For the number of problems you face, it must be met with the same number of policies. So, based on the question phrasing, A Tinbergen rule is a very good candidate to use as a synthesis. Why? Because the question already tells you that there are two problems or more than that. And whenever there are two problems and when you're trying to use one policy to address two problems, it tells you that the condition for Tinbergen rule is not met, right? And therefore, there is a need, okay, for an alternative to combine them together. So remember, the next time when you want to consider a combination of policies, go through this thought process. Can I introduce Tinbergen's rule? Okay, I just want to check. Is this the first time you all hear about Tinbergen's rule? I don't think RI students is the first time, right? Okay, so you can see that there's some disparity in what schools are covering. Okay, Tinbergen's rule is a very popular ending, okay, for policy-based questions. Right, so in a nutshell, okay, if you don't understand Tinbergen rule, okay, understand what Mr. Teo is saying today. Okay, one stone cannot kill two birds. One stone cannot kill two birds. In order to kill two birds, okay, you need the same number of stones. 3 stone, 3 birds. Okay, so this is what Tinbergen rule is telling you. Okay, so before we introduce combination, you have to cite why is there a combination required because of Tinbergen rule. Because there are multiple problems. That's why we need multiple policies. Yeah, so this is a particularly good ending. A lot of top school students are using that. Clear? Okay, so this is how you want to use Tinbergen rule. Remember, don't abuse this. Tinbergen rule is not applicable for micro. Okay, it's only applicable for macro only. You use it for micro, okay, your lecturers will put a question mark. Okay, so put only for macro. Yes? Next, okay, you can consider to justify in terms of time period. Okay, in terms of time period, okay, the government may wish to emphasize on fiscal policy because it's faster, and you combine it with supply side policy in the long run, which is slower. Okay, so you can critique based on time period as well. So I give you two means. You can either critique by root cause or you can critique by time period. Tinbergen rule is essentially root cause. Clear? Someone mentioned first time, okay. Probably you haven't been listening carefully in your school. Okay, I believe I got this from your school notes. cannot be never heard before, huh? Okay, so with that, okay, I will wrap it up. Okay, so some of the examiners' comments. Okay, supply side policy to attract FDI is accepted to target demand deficient unemployment. Okay, so this is the demand side effects of supply side policy. Okay, short run, long run supply side policy, okay, to address cost of production, okay, is going to promote demand deficient unemployment. So I'm going to show you this. Remember just now I actually showed balance of trade approach. Okay, so you can potentially relate this to an AD effect. Okay, the increase in X minus M due to higher export competitiveness can promote actual growth. Okay, you can use this, okay, as an extension. Okay, but like what I've said, thinking back, okay, you realize that both theses and antitheses they should be built differently. It cannot be both supply side policy, or it's not good to bring in supply side policy twice. Think through. So although I put all these to be okay, but they are not really good fit. Okay, in order to address demand deficient, you go straight to demand side policies. Don't beat around the bush and tell me demand side effect. Okay, so then there's a risk of adopting such approach. Okay, when you stick to supply side alone, okay, then you run into issues of scope. Exchange rate policy, okay, I'll recommend that. Okay, on top of the two. Okay, interest rate and protectionism, I will reject. Okay, so these two are not going to be accepted in Singapore. All right, clear? Okay, so with that, okay, I am going to remember, don't run away first. Okay, I'm going to. You have any questions for me? Stay back and ask me. All right.